Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Zemo, the Dad in DPS, and we are back with another video. Now today's video is in relation to caps and how to get them in Fallout 76. But before we get on with the video, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. So, caps. Now, there's a lot of different things you can use for caps, there's a lot of different reasons you want caps. This is not going to cover that. It's about how to get them. Now, first off, we have our vendors and the 1400 caps that each vendor has as a bog standard thing. This 1400 caps is shared amongst all vendors, so if you spend, well, I say you spend, if you sell something and get 200 caps from one vendor, the next vendor will have 200 caps less. They're all linked. You can only get 1400 per day, except for during events where it goes up to 2800. Either way, that's the kind of standpoint. Get those 1400 caps a day and, you know, you're going to be accumulating something steadily. Now, before you go and start selling things to those vendors, the best thing to do is optimize your perks and your special stats. Now, what I mean by that is charisma increases the amount of caps you get per individual item. So say I sell a stim pack and it's worth 9 caps. With max charisma, it might be worth 20 caps. I really don't know the numbers off the top of my head, I'm just giving you an example. It increases the value of each individual item to an NPC. There is also the hard bargain perk in the charisma tree, which will also boost the amount of caps that you get per item. And finally, there is grape mentats. Grape mentats give you an increase to charisma, which in turn also increases barter and the amount of caps you get, but it also says it's got an additional effect of doing that as well, so you might actually get a double effect of it. I'm really not sure, but it does increase the amount of caps you get from vendors. So yeah, that's the first thing kind of start off with. Second, events. Now, events are very important for caps because after completion of any and all events, you will get a small amount of caps. This really varies between event to event, but the one that is best for getting pure cappage is Test Your Metal. Test Your Metal will give you anything up to 1000 caps at the end of it. Now, I don't mean 1000 caps, just bang, 1000 caps. Each objective you complete in Test Your Metal gives you anywhere between 100 to 500 caps, which all in all adds up to 1000 caps. So it'll look like you're getting less, but in actuality it adds up to about that, which is great, which is absolutely great. On top of events, there is events that give special rewards. Now, the 3 that I'm going to cover are Radiation Rumble, Free Range, and Project Paradise. Now, why these ones in particular? Well, these have a very decent chance of dropping some rare plans. Radiation Rumble has your Radiation Barrel. The Free Range has the weapon plans for the Sheepscotch Staff, the Sheepscotch Mace, and the upgrades for each of these. And Project Paradise has your Bear Arm plans and your Bear Arm upgrades, as well as some Nuclear Winter plans. Now, the thing about these plans is they typically sell quite well, and the Radiation Barrel from Radiation Rumble sells for about 20,000 plus. It really depends on who you speak to, if you're putting it in your vendor, or if you're, manually trading for it, but 20,000 caps, usually a bare minimum. Then you have the Sheepscotch Staff and all the little bits. Those plans vary. The rarer of the plans can sell for anything up to 6,000 plus. It really depends on how desperate someone is to get them, because they are very difficult to get in comparison, because no one does free range. And I say no one does free range, there's plenty of people that do free range, but if the percentage of players that actually bother to go to free range versus the percentage of players that actually play the game is small. The same goes for Project Paradise. The plans there are rare. The Bear Arm plan, again, you could probably sell it for 20,000 caps. It just depends on who you're speaking to and obviously what you're doing. Either way, these are very good events to go to. Then finally, the last reason to go to events is legendary enemies. Now, some events have significantly more legendary enemies than others. The 2 that I will give a mention is, once again, Radiation Rumble and Eviction Notice. You can end up with about anywhere up to 20, 30 legendaries from these events. It is insane the amount of legendary enemies that go to these events, and you can get them. And the reason why I'm mentioning legendaries is that they are anywhere between the 500 cap mark to the more than the freaking whole amount of caps you can get. I mean, in theory, some weapons are worth 80,000 caps. 120,000 caps. It depends on the weapon, depends on individual perks, depends on the person who's buying it, but in theory, you can sell legendary weapons and armors for a crap load of caps. That takes a little bit more knowledge and needs a little bit more in-depth idea of what is good versus what isn't, but legendary items are very valuable in situations. So yeah, go to events, do them, get caps from the rewards, sell the crap that you get from the events, all that, and you end up with more than enough caps than you need. And it literally just depends on what you're going about. Then we move on to legendaries in general and buying and reselling. Now, as I've stated, people will sell legendary items. Now, some people will sell legendary items dirt cheap. Some people will sell them for extortionate prices that they're not worth. That's all about you kind of figuring out what is good versus what isn't. And you can find that on forums. There's lots of different things about it. I might make a video in the future of what is valuable versus what isn't in terms of weapons in the future. But there are websites that can help with this, like Fed76. I always call it FedEx as if it's a delivery company. So yeah, buying legendaries from other people's vendors that are underpriced and then selling them for more what they're worth, or trading them away, is always a good idea. And again, you'll just need to do a bit of research to figure out what works in regards to that. Now, after that, we have things like flux and mutation serums. And the reason I put these both in the same thing is because to make mutation serums, you need flux. So they're hand in hand the same thing. Now, how do you gather flux? Well, there's a couple of different ways. The first off is that you can go to events like Scorched Earth and a Colossal Problem. Both of these events will drop a small amount of flux after defeating Earl, the Queen, and the completion of the mission. You're not going to get a lot out of this, unless, like me, you've been doing it for years and it just gradually builds up. The other method is you can launch a nuclear weapon, drop it onto a specific location of the map that you decide is where you want to farm, and then you basically kill the enemies that spawn there. Now, there's a couple of different methods for spawning enemies in regards to nuclear drops and things like that. I'm fairly certain I have a flux guide in my repertoire, so I'll leave a link to that down below, but that's a way to go about it, is that's how you farm flux. My favourite place to do it is on White Springs, because there's a lot of ghouls, and if you do it on a private server, you can pretty much just jump back to Vault 76, wait a little bit, travel back, and everything's respawned. So there is ways of doing it and going about it, and if you do have friends on the server with you, you can actually increase the amount of flux you get, because each of you will get items from those enemies. And basically the gist is, flux isn't just going to drop as it is. You need to find a couple of different parts from enemies and then combine it with raw flux from plants. But again, there'll be a guide to that down below in the description. Now, once you've got your flux, you can obviously turn them into mutation serums. Mutation serums give you your mutations in game, like herbivore, carnivore, marsupial. I'm not going to go through all of them. If you don't know what mutations are, well, you've not been playing the game very long. There's lots of guides on that out there anyway, but they give you special abilities that do different things. These mutations can be made permanent with the right perks and with the serums, which will allow you to gain that perk without having to randomly go through the getting yourself radiation until you get the right ones and trying to keep them. Either way, mutation serums sell for caps quite easily, as does flux, and you can sell both quite well. Anybody will buy them. If you put flux into a vendor, it will sell, therefore you will get caps from it. And the more flux you have, obviously the more caps you then have inherently. Then we have farming. Now, farming is pretty much standard for most games, and honestly the best place to farm is West Tech. Why West Tech? Well, West Tech has some of the biggest, strongest enemies that give the best XP, they drop a small amount of caps, and they also quite often will have legendaries. That's the super mutants that are there. So go to West Tech, go in, slaughter everything, grab everything that you've got, scrap it down, put it in your inventory, get all the caps, get the legendaries, and then sell the legendaries. Depending on, obviously, if you need them or not. But you get the point of this. It's all about gathering legendaries, gathering the different types of ammo, there's the different types of scrap. I mean, any of these things can, in theory, sell. I wouldn't really recommend selling steel because, quite frankly, no one really needs it. It tends to be something that is easy enough to get. But gunpowder might sell relatively well because people out there are crafting a crap load of ammo and run out of ammo, which is why they also need flux, because flux can create ultrasight ammo. You see where I'm going here? There's a lot of different things that work in tandem with each other and are good ways of getting money. Then it comes down to, where do you check prices? Where do you find out what X, Y, and Z is worth? Well, asking around is always a good idea. Speaking to different people in different Discords, different servers, on YouTube channels, there's loads of different places that you can ask that will give you at least some decent advice. Most people aren't out there to scam you, which is why I say ask around, because if you ask one person who is out to go, oh, that's worth nothing, I'll buy it off you for 10 caps, well, then that's exactly the point, isn't it? If you ask the next person, they go, oh, that's worth 10,000 caps. So ask around, get a general idea, and then kind of make your own judgment based on it. When it comes to prices, it really just falls down to the thought process that things are only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And sometimes something might be worth, let's say, 120,000 caps. No one's got that. No one has got that. So you have to go down the route of, what else is worth that? Can they trade things for you for that? Can they give you amount of flux that can substitute as money? It's all about figuring out what each individual thing is worth and then what you can get for it. That being said as well, just because something's worth a certain amount of caps doesn't mean someone's willing to pay it. So sometimes you have to make a compromise of what is someone is willing to actually offer you versus what its potential value is. So figuring that out can be really difficult in certain things, and trading away for rare items or trading away rare items can be a massive pain in the neck. So always take a little bit of caution with it and make sure that you're doing trades via people, well, go-betweens, people who are out there and actually willing to be an impartial party. I forget what they're called, but I'm sure plenty of people leave that down in the comments. And if you go to my server and ask any of my mods that are there, they are quite trusted people in my opinion. So yeah, they would be good kind of people to, you know, sit in and trade things over for people and make sure that no one gets scammed. But that's my opinion. You know, you guys can come to your own opinions on that. Couriers, that's what they're called, couriers. But yeah, that's a different thing to think of. Another place you can also check is Fed76. I'll leave a link to that down below as well. Fed76 is the website that has an overall kind of idea of what things are worth, what you can get on average, all that kind of thing. Take it with a pinch of salt. It's not 100% correct, because I have sold things for more than what they say, and I've sold things for less than what they say. There's no 100% this is exactly what this is worth, because Fallout 76's economy is quite unstable due to the fact of massive amounts of dupes and people just abusing mechanics. So you kind of have to take everything that's on there with a pinch of salt, but it is there. There is plenty of decent information on that website. Now, the last thing we're going to cover is vendoring tips and tricks. Now, typically the best thing to do to lure people to your vendor is to have it stocked full. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't necessarily mean it's stocked full with useful things. So, for example, if you've got legendary weapons to sell, stocking it full of crappy legendary weapons that you sell cheap is a way to lure people in to look at your ones that are a little bit more expensive. So say you've got 20 legendary weapons in there, and out of the 20 there's only 2 really good ones, but you sell the crappy ones that you would script yourself, or you've got too much script to script yourself, you sell them for 500 to 700 caps depending on how good they are. They'll sell relatively quickly, and then people might buy your better items. You know, your bloodied explosive faster reload fixer, for example. I wouldn't really recommend putting that in your vendor, but you get my point. It's all about figuring out what people are going to buy, and sometimes selling little bits of things is better than selling big drops of things. On top of that, there's a lot of plans in game that are absolutely common as muck, but people still buy them. So putting these crappy plans into your vendor in order to lure them in to buy the bigger plans, like your bear arm plan, like your radiation barrel, having these little crappy plans that you're selling for, 10, 20, 30, 100, 500, 1,000, just these small little drips and drabs, they add up. They do add up, because some people just bounce from vendor to vendor on a new character and go, I've not got any plans in this character, so I'm going to buy a load of rubbish plans for super cheap. And they do. And if you've got 500 of these plans and they sell for 10 caps each, well, that is 5,000 caps. You get my point. It's all about little things that add up to a big thing, and filling your vendors with just absolutely mundane stuff that you're selling cheap. New people will benefit, older people will benefit, you'll benefit. Everyone will benefit. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not really much to it. Getting caps in Appalachia is not that difficult. It's all about just optimizing it and trying to help everybody out, not being too greedy, but also not being stupid with your money and selling things that are worth more for significantly less. You can get away with that with obviously the little crappy common plans, but you certainly shouldn't with things like the big expensive plans. And that is why if you see a plan that you've never seen before, or a weapon you've never seen before, or something that you're unfamiliar with, check the price before you sell it, because you could be sitting on something that is a literal gold mine. That was today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, there are several means. You can click that coffee button to donate to me directly. There's also our Teespring for the merch that you can see on screen right now, as well as our YouTube member button and the new Super Thanks button. So if you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to hit any of them. Now, on the note of our members, let's thank them.